It had been over a year since I last stepped into the Moreland estate. The place looked as though it had been lifted straight from a high-end magazine spread. Every detail was deliberate. The ballroom glowed with warm light from crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors reflected the shine, and freshly painted columns framed the space. The display of wealth was meant to impress the city's oldest families, and it worked. A soft string quartet filled the room, interrupted now and then by polite applause and controlled laughter. I stood near the far wall, keeping as much distance from attention as I could manage. The beige silk dress Vivian had chosen for me hung stiffly against my body. The fabric felt cool and rigid, what she had called understated elegance when she dropped it off at my apartment. I understood the message behind her words. Blend in. Don't stand out. Don't give anyone a reason to remember you were here. Selena moved easily through the crowd, her arm linked with her husband's. Together they looked like a couple meant for the cover of a society wedding magazine, all charm and rehearsed smiles. I noticed her immediately, but she looked past me to greet an alderman's wife. It wasn't anger I felt from her, just distance, the kind built slowly until it feels permanent. Vivian drifted nearby in a silver gown, her voice light, her laugh sharper than necessary. She rested a possessive hand on my father's arm while speaking to a small group. I watched how quickly his expression shifted to match her cues, just as it had for years. A waiter stopped beside me with a tray of champagne. I accepted a flute without thinking, even though I had barely touched alcohol in months. The glass was cold in my hand, the pale gold liquid catching the light as if it belonged in this room more than I did. I stayed at the edge of the crowd, sipping slowly, watching my family command attention in a house that once felt like mine. As the music swelled for the next host, I felt an urge to leave the room, to slip into a quiet hallway where the sound couldn't follow. I told myself I only needed air, a brief escape from the flawless, suffocating scene. I didn't yet realize that stepping out of the ballroom would change everything. One of my father's cousins cornered me near the dessert table, deep into a story about her new lake house, when I felt it. At first it was subtle, just a slight shift in my balance. Then the edges of the room softened, and the chandelier lights blurred into halos. I tightened my grip on the champagne flute. I hadn't even finished half of it. I had been careful, spacing each sip. This wasn't alcohol. I knew my body well enough to tell. Her voice faded into background noise, words turning into meaningless sound. My pulse thudded in my ears. I forced a smile, muttered something about checking the coat room, and stepped away. The floor felt uneven beneath my heels as I moved through the crowd, careful not to draw attention. I glanced once toward Vivian. She was still laughing, flawless and unshaken, as if nothing could touch her. I set the glass onto a passing waiter's tray. The stem slipped from my fingers too easily. Cool air brushed my skin from the hallway beyond the ballroom, and I followed it instinctively. With every step into the corridor, the noise softened. My breathing slowed, though the fog in my head remained. I tried to reason it away, skipped lunch, heat from the crowd, but the explanation didn't settle. That last sip had tasted faintly bitter, almost metallic. I reached the end of the hall, one hand against the wall to steady myself. The kitchen doors swung open ahead, releasing the sound of clattering dishes and the smell of butter and herbs. I stepped toward them, hoping for a chair or a glass of water. Instead, someone was there waiting. The kitchen was busy, loud in a way that sharply contrasted with the ballroom's controlled elegance. I barely had time to take it in before a man stepped away from a stack of folded linens and approached me. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that held my attention. His voice was calm and low. Celine Moreland. I hesitated. Yes? My name is Leon Weller, he said. I'm security for the venue tonight. Years ago, I worked for Moreland and Associates, your mother's firm. Something tightened in my chest at the mention of my mother. Before I could respond, he leaned in slightly, choosing his words carefully. Vivian put something in your drink. I saw it. The kitchen noise dulled as I stared at him. What? She took a small capsule from her clutch, dropped it into the glass, stirred once. It dissolved fast. Looked harmless, but I know what I saw. My pulse quickened. You're sure? I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't, he replied. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me a business card. If you can switch glasses, make it look accidental. Don't drink from yours again. Whatever's in there isn't for celebration. I took the card. It felt heavier than it should have. Why are you telling me this? Because I knew your mother, he said, and she'd want someone watching your back. He didn't wait for an answer. With a short nod, he turned and disappeared down the service hallway, leaving me standing there, gripping the card, my thoughts suddenly clear and sharp. My hands remained folded neatly in my lap. My pulse had steadied. I understood exactly what had happened. That drink had been meant for me. And now, under the ballroom's bright lights, in front of more than 100 witnesses, Vivian was the one struggling to breathe. My father dropped to his knees beside her, calling her name, his voice breaking. Selena stayed close, pressing a napkin into Vivian's hand, though it was useless against whatever was moving through her system. Sirens grew louder outside, a sharp wail cutting through the disorder. Red and blue lights flashed against the tall windows as paramedics arrived. Police followed soon after, before the last shard of glass had been cleared away. Officers moved through the room, guiding guests toward the foyer to give statements. I stayed where I was until a woman in a dark blazer approached, her badge catching the light. "Detective Moran," she said calmly, taking the seat across from me and opening a small notebook. Her eyes lingered on my face, as if she were searching for a reaction. "You don't seem shaken," she noted. "I process things differently," I replied evenly. She asked where I had been sitting, how close I was to Vivian, whether I'd noticed anything unusual. I answered carefully, offering nothing extra and denying nothing. When she thanked me and moved on, I could still feel her attention on me as she questioned the next guest. The following morning, my phone rang. The number was blocked. "This is Detective Keene," a voice said. "We'd like you to come down to the station." The walls there were the color of wet sand, the air faintly metallic. Keene sat across from me with a closed folder resting between her hands. "We received the toxicology report." She began. "Scopolamine, a small dose but enough to cause disorientation, fainting, and at higher levels, memory loss." I met her gave it. Her eyebrows lifted. "You believe it?" "Yes," I said, "because I was supposed to drink that glass." The room seemed to pause. "Explain," she said. I told her about Leon Weller, the warning in the kitchen, and how I'd switched the glasses. I didn't embellish. I let the facts speak for themselves. She listened without interrupting, her expression neutral. "That's a serious accusation," she said at last. "If it's true, it changes everything." "It is true," I replied. Her fingers tapped the folder once before stopping. "Then we'll need more than your word." I already knew where I would find it. 2 months before the anniversary party, an envelope had arrived at my apartment. The return address was from an old brick building in downtown Savannah, my mother's attorney's office. I hadn't heard from them since her estate was settled, and seeing their letterhead tightened something in my chest. Inside was a short letter and a photocopy of a legal document. The letter explained that while reviewing archived files, they had discovered a clause in my parents' prenuptial agreement. I skimmed the dense text until my eyes caught on the line that changed everything. If my father remarried, his new spouse would be barred from inheriting anything connected to my mother's assets, her properties, investments, or residual trusts. Those rights would pass directly to me. I read it 3 times, barely breathing. It wasn't just protection. It was a locked door, with my mother holding the key. Vivian had been standing on the other side of that door for years, assuming it would eventually open. At first, I told no one. But a week later, I made a call to an old family friend, asking questions I thought would remain private. I should have known better. Nothing in my family ever stayed contained. Soon after, the invitations started arriving. Dinner at the estate, brunch with just the women, even Selena's anniversary party, events I'd been excluded from for years. Vivian began complimenting my clothes, my hair, my composure. It was excessive, sudden, and clearly rehearsed. She hadn't grown kinder. She'd simply adjusted her strategy. The night of the party, when she handed me that beige dress with a smile that suggested acceptance, the truth was clear. Vivian wasn't opening a door. She was setting a trap. And by the time I recognized it, I was already standing inside it. Vivian did not wait long. 3 days after the party, a glossy local lifestyle blog published an exclusive interview with her. The headline praised her as a respected pillar of the community who had been targeted by her troubled stepdaughter. The article quoted her extensively. She described a frightening medical episode and claimed she had always tried to welcome me, despite what she called my resentment over her marriage to my father. She made no mention of the toxicology report. Leon was not mentioned at all, and neither was the prenuptial clause. The comment section was unforgiving. People who had never met me filled the thread with speculation, accusing me of jealousy, ambition, and worse. It was the kind of polished public narrative Vivian handled well, emotional, composed, and believable enough for readers who wanted a clear villain. That evening, my phone rang. Leon's name appeared on the screen. "I have something," he said without introduction. I pulled the kitchen footage from the security archive before it could be erased. Within an hour, he was at my apartment with a flash drive. The video quality was rough but unmistakable. Vivian stood at the bar, glanced over her shoulder, removed something from her clutch, and dropped it into a glass. My glass. One quick stir and it dissolved. There was more. Another clip showed her leaning toward a server, whispering something before he hurried away. Leon told me the man never returned after her collapse. No one had been able to reach him since. "This isn't theory anymore," Leon said. "It's evidence." I knew better than to take it to the same outlets Vivian had already influenced. Instead, I contacted a small independent journalist I trusted. I shared the footage, the timestamps, and Leon's statement. By the next morning, the video was online. There was no commentary and no dramatic framing, just the footage, presented clearly. Within hours, public opinion began to shift. By the second day, the video had spread beyond Savannah. The tone changed. Less gossip, more judgment. 2 nonprofit boards quietly removed Vivian's name from their listings. A boutique she co-owned deleted her photo from its website. Her image, once an asset, had become a liability. Later that afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was my father. His voice was strained, stripped of the warmth he reserved for public settings. "Celine, we need to talk tomorrow. At the house." When I arrived, the air inside felt colder than I remembered. Vivian was not there. My father sat at the dining table with a folder in front of him. "She's gone," he said. "Left last night. I don't know where." I remained standing. "Here's what I want," I said. "A public acknowledgement of the truth, Vivian out of my mother's house, and every asset tied to my mother's estate returned to me immediately." He studied me for a long moment, then opened the folder. Inside were signed documents restoring my legal control over the properties, investments, and trust my mother had built. "You win," he said quietly. "I should have protected you." It was not an apology. It was a fact, delivered too late to matter. I took the folder, its weight solid in my hands. "You could have," I said. His gaze dropped. "What happens next is up to you." I didn't answer. I had what I came for. The rest of the outcome was already set in motion. Within a week, the keys to my mother's house were back in my hand. I walked through every room, opening the drapes and letting the light return. I took family photos out of storage and placed them back on the mantels where Vivian had replaced them with her own. The garden, neglected under her care, was cleared and replanted slowly, section by section. I restored the house to what it had always been, a home that belonged to us, not her. Weeks later, Selena visited. She stood near the doorway, eyes moving over the returned photographs and the roses blooming outside. She didn't come far inside. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she said quietly. I didn't argue. Belief was hers to manage. After she left, Leon called. "She's keeping a low profile," he said. "No boards, no appearances. The people she relied on aren't calling back." I thanked him. He didn't ask what I planned to do next, and I didn't explain. There were no press releases, no interviews. I didn't post photos or feed new rumors. I let the footage, the documents, and the silence speak for themselves. The consequences were already unfolding. Nothing I added would have sharpened them. Some outcomes don't require celebration. One evening, I sat on the back porch, the scent of fresh soil in the air, and watched the light fade over the garden my mother once planted. The house was mine again. More importantly, it was safe. I had survived, and that mattered more than any headline or public reckoning.